There's a right way and a wrong way to harvest your basil. The wrong way leaves you with a dead plant ready for the compost bin, and the right way will leave you with a plant that continues to give you fresh leaves to enjoy all summer long. You'll be a pesto making machine by the end of this video. So, here we have a fresh pot of live basil from the supermarket. A great way to get some basil for tonight's tomato sauce and still be left with a plant that provides for the future. Now the first thing you should do is to get it out of this pot and separate each of the individual plants, but that's a video for another day. One I've actually already made that is linked in the top right. Mrs. Sheffield buys these all the time. Every time I see the same thing happening. By the time she's done, they end up looking like this. This is not how a basil plant should look after you're finished with it. All the leaves have been stripped away and we're left with a bunch of bare naked stalks. This is the end of the plant and a serious waste of potential. I tell her off, but she does the same thing the next weekend. So plucking the leaves off and stripping it to its bare bum like this leaves it with nowhere to go. There's no photosynthesizing magic the little fella can do, so the stems will eventually shrivel up and die, and it's good night Vienna. Here's what you do. Let's say you're making a pasta sauce for tonight, so you want to harvest most of this little plant. Grab your basil and a nice pair of clean scissors. They don't really need to be sterile or anything, just nice and clean and not rusty. Dirty, rusty scissors can introduce bacteria to the cuts we make, and our plant will be toast in no time. Now, check out the stems. You'll notice that they are all single long stalks with sets of leaves branching off every so often. Give these sets of leaves a closer look. You should be able to see little baby leaves emerging next to them. These baby leaves are the key to keeping your plant alive and making it a bushier specimen to die for. So locate the lowest set of leaves on a stem and make a cut just above like this. You should be left with a couple of big leaves with some smaller leaves nestled in. Now that we have cut the stem, the plant will look for the next available growth point down, which are those little leaves just below where we made the cut. These leaves will now grow into two brand new branches with fresh leaves. We've effectively doubled the potential growth of our plant. If we don't make the cut on the stem like this, then it will just continue to grow as a single stem and not branch out like we want. Continue making these cuts on all the stems and you'll end up with something like this. Basil that has had a serious haircut. But don't panic, give it a few weeks and you'll have more basil to harvest, I promise. Just make sure that you are cutting back to a set of leaves that are somewhat mature. You often get little baby leaves near the base of the plant and these aren't big enough for it to photosynthesize properly. You've made the cut successfully, but your work isn't done yet, my plant friend. We need to get a few things right to set our bad boy up for success and to not die bravely on the compost pile. Before I spill the beans, let me just point you in a direction of my free plant troubleshooting handbook that you can download by following the link in the description or scanning this QR code here. It's got all the common plant failures, why they happen, and what to do about it in an easily digestible digital handbook. Check it out. Right, setting our newly pruned plant up for success. First, there is light. Basil is a Mediterranean plant, of course, and they want as much sun as you can give. This is especially important if you're keeping yours on your windowsill and not in the garden or balcony. The sunniest spot indoors just won't compare to the great outdoors. There's walls and ceilings in the way, so pop it somewhere that gets lots of sun. My kitchen windowsill faces east, so my basil will get a few hours of morning sun only, but that is the best I can do for it. The aim of the game is to give it at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sun a day. And a pro tip is to rotate your plant every few days. They're relatively quick growers once they get going and love to lean towards the light, so not rotating means uneven growth. And if you can't give it the light it craves, then a good option is to pop it under a Sansi grow light that you get by using my code for a 15% discount linked in the description. I often get asked how long you should keep a grow light on, and the answer is about 12 hours a day, but for basil I would up this to at least 14 hours a day. Don't be tempted to leave it on 24/7 though. They need a period of dark just as much as they need light. Now, if you're doing this in the depths of winter, then not only will light be your biggest enemy, but also temperature. Basil love warmth. They're pretty nesh, you see. In fact, they thrive in temps between 21 and 24 degrees Celsius during the day and don't like sitting in temps below 16 degrees Celsius at night. So keep that in mind when setting your minimum temperatures on your thermostat, and keep them away from external doors or windows that get opened a lot. They hate a cold draft on their neck. I don't think they're too fussed about humidity, but they probably won't like to be sat next to a radiator or aircon vent, so keep that in mind. So this plant has just had all its limbs amputated, so it's feeling a bit sensitive, and one of the most important things we can do for it is to keep it well hydrated. Basil don't like to have their soil dry out. They prefer it to always be moist. Leave it too long between watering and you'll see it doing a good impression of a smooth criminal. But equally, they don't want to be waterlogged all the time. This will suffocate the roots and it'll mean the downfall of your plant in no time. Just stick your finger deep into the soil and water when it's feeling like it's getting a bit dry. But don't water like this. Do this instead. You want all the roots to be hydrated. Water thoroughly and let all the excess come out of the holes in the pot. Most of the time, these plants we get from the store haven't eaten for a long time. It's one of the reasons they die so quickly when we get them home. Now basil are quick growers, and like any quick growing teenagers, they like to eat you out of house and home. So put your newly pruned guy on a feed schedule to give him the nitrogen he craves to grow all those new stems. I use Houseplant Focus for pretty much all my plants, and I do the same for my basil. Feel free to experiment though, there are probably feeds out there that are specifically for herbs. You'll have probably noticed that the basil you get from the store has a bunch of stems tightly packed into the pot. This is actually a disaster for your plant and will mean it likely dies in a matter of days. The solution is pretty simple though, and I go through it all in this video here, so make sure you check it out. I'll see you there.